I think that whatever we do, if human dignity, we put it in the center of any development work, that's going to be really a sustainable one. And yeah, so welcome, Marcel. And he's going to take us on some few things. And one of the first things he's going to take us through is he's going to tell us what is the UPR. So what is the Universal Periodic Review? What is it all about? And what is the whole process about? So I know many of us, some of us maybe have already received some of the training on it, but others not yet. So those who are newly coming in will have a basic notion about the Universal Periodic Review. And he's going also to tell us a bit why is it so important for Pax Romana members to get involved in this process as an organization, and what can be the role of Pax Romana members in this process, and at which stage of the process they can get involved. So Marcel, welcome, and I will give you the floor. But before I do that, maybe logistic announcement. So if you don't have the floor, just mute your microphone. And we have a chat box where you can write your questions, comments, and I will be there just reading through the chat box and taking all your questions. One, he has finished his presentation, then we'll get back with some of those questions for him to give a bit of clarification if needed. So most welcome to you all. And Marcel, I will give you the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chantal, for this presentation and this introduction. I'm very honored and privileged to address you today, and also very happy to have many of our brothers and sisters from Pax Romana. I'm both of Pax Romana, by the way. Pax Romana, the youth wing, and then Pax Romana, the intellectual wing, what I can call, and the adult wing. So it is very important for us to have this conversation on a topic that is very important nowadays. And as Chantal, you say, it is about the Universal Periodic Review. The question that we often ask ourselves is, why is the Universal Periodic Review? So it is a new mechanism that I think that we will be able to talk about today. But before I start, I would wish to just highlight that today what I'm trying to do is not really to put myself in my in the posture of in a lecturer posture. As you know, I teach international law at the University of Grenoble in France. So I don't want to do that. I just want us to have a chat, a conversation on UPR and how we can benefit, contribute to it. We can be part of it and then enhance protection, human rights protection mechanism at the country level. And to use the word that you have just used, Chantal, how to advance the human dignity in the work that we do, in our faith, in the expression of our faith, and in how we as Christian in general, but Catholic in particular, we live our faith to make change happen in our society. And the best way to do it, of course, in my view, it is to get involved in the human rights issues, in human rights activities, in human rights protection and engagement at the country level. So, welcome to all of you. I think that I understand that the group is a mixed group of people who are aware of the UPR process, and then some who are also a little bit new to the concept. So I will try as much as I can to make it simpler. And in the first part, to tell you exactly what the UPR is all about, what are the key processes, and then in the second part, talk about how, as an NGO, we can influence the process, we can be part of the process. And then I say NGO because ICMICA, Pax Romana is considered as a non-governmental organization. And then to support or to be part of it, we have to use that hat to be able to enter. So I will talk about key steps to be taken in order to be part of the UPR process, to contribute and then to participate in it. And then after that, there was an idea which came up yesterday, which is that we could use a specific country example to see how we can support our brothers and sisters at a specific country level to spearhead such kind of participation in the review process. And then of course we have to link all that to what determine us, what make us different, what make us unique and specific. It is our Christian values, it is our Catholic faith. So welcome to all of you. What's UPR? UPR, in fact, is the Universal Periodic Review. Universal Periodic Review, which is a new mechanism of a human rights, the Human Rights Council. You know that the Human Rights Council is in Geneva, is based in Geneva. And then it has been since 2006 created by the General Assembly of the UN to replace the initial review process that exists at the Human Rights Council level. And that review means or entails to take into consideration all the 193 country members of the United Nations system, and then cross-check, and then project a very nitty-gritty eye on how they are making progress on their human rights obligation, how they are fulfilling their commitment on their human rights obligation, and then how they are trying to address the challenges that they are confronted with in fulfilling their commitments under treaties and then conventions that they have actually been party to. And this is something that is very, very new, because it came to replace, it is the UPR was created in response to the criticism that the previous UN mechanism used to face. And those previous human rights mechanisms, as some of you may know, were very much criticized because they tend to put the blame or to portray or to single out southern part countries as the culprit of a human rights violation, and then make a very, very good and rosy picture of the northern country, including the United States of America, the European countries, And then all the northern sphere, the western sphere country who are very much considered as the so-called good boys or the advanced nations in human rights. And they review the commitment, the capacity, the response to the obligation of a state based on those kind of separations. So the UPR called Universal Periodic Review came in to address those challenges of discrepancies and then discrimination, I would say, between nations, some who are considered as bad and some other who are considered as good nation on human rights. So definitely that is a mechanism that puts everyone at the same level, and from a very universal point of view, try to uniformly address human rights challenge and scrutinize on how each country is addressing or responding to the human rights situation at its national level. What are the goals of the human rights, the Universal Periodic Review? The goal, generally speaking, and then as defined by the General Assembly when creating the mechanism, were in 5 motions. The first one is that it has to address the inequalities and all forms of discrimination in treatment when it comes to take charge of a human right or to address a human right at country level that I just mentioned. To advance, and that's the second, the human rights situation for all, not just for some very bad guys in the house, but for everyone, And then thirdly, for pushing government to fulfill their human rights obligation and then commitment. And the fourth one is to review the positive development at each country level and also try to see the challenges that countries are confronted with and then see how they can be supported. And then the last one, it is to use that mechanism to share good practices between countries and then the stakeholders. As you can see, it is a substantive, but it's also process-based, and it aims at addressing discrepancies in treatment of nations at global level, but also how countries at a national level are addressing their fundamental human rights challenges. Now, when this became a reality, it was the first ever mechanism across the world in the history of the Human Rights Council and then the United Nations as well, where at least everyone, every country, every state is guaranteed that it will be reviewed. If the situation of a human right at the national level will be reviewed with the same consideration, with the same parameter, with the same paradigms, like any other country that is considered as advanced or developed country. And it has, the Human Rights Council has scheduled a very specific process for it. And the schedule initially was that each country would be reviewed randomly every 5 years. But I think that now it has dropped to four and a half, and then 4. And the 42 state countries who are members of the Human Rights Council, which became later on under UPR, the UPR working group, would be reviewed during 3 working group and a working session. And every section, there is 14 countries that will be reviewed. And these sessions are usually held, of course, as you know, in January, February, May, June. The first one is January, February. The second one is May, June, and then the third one is in October and November. And then of course, it happened in Geneva, where the Human Rights Council is located. The review itself, how does it happen? As I say at the beginning, the universality of the review is fundamental to guarantee its fairness. And it is at the beginning to address the discrepancy between how states are treated that this came about. So the notion of a universality is very, very important. So countries are selected randomly for the review. So it is not that based on the human rights development at the country level, some France or America or UK would say that, for example, Kenya, and there is a fight in Kenya, or there is something bad happening in Kenya, and therefore Kenya should be reviewed. No, it's not like that. It is a randomly selected process where each and everyone should be subjected to the same process. So all countries that are part of the United Nations are reviewed. And of course, the initial members of the Human Rights Council, especially those who have elected position, are also reviewed, but those are reviewed the first. There is, of course, during the review process, a consideration of a geographical reality. So country, while selected for their review, are chosen in a way that there is a geographical balance in the review process. The next point that I think is very important that I talk about is what's the basis of that review? We're talking about review, but what's the basis of that review? And the review is fundamentally really based on 5 key issues. The first one is the Charter. The Charter of the United Nations guides the review, and questions and recommendations that are made during the discussion are very often aligned with the content of the Charter. The second one is the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the UDHR, which is a non-binding instrument that we all know, but which is part already of the customary law, international customary law, and that each and every state, even though it doesn't have a binding status as the law, are obliged to abide by it. And that Universal Declaration guides the review process. And the third issue, the third thing that guides the process is the set of instruments, the set of conventions that the country who is being reviewed are party to, have ratified, and then is party to. And that help the other states to see what are the progress made after the ratification or after being member of or becoming party to such a convention or such kind of another treaty. How are the progress being made? And then of course, there are 2 other points that are very important, is the country voluntary pledge and commitment, and of course also the applicable international humanitarian law. So those are the 5 principles that guide the review. And now, how does it work? As we say, it is a very, very innovative and cooperative mechanism based on interactive dialogue between the country who is being reviewed and any other UN country who are part of the Human Rights Council. And during this interactive dialogue, the country under review presents its reports, answers questions, and receive recommendations from other countries. And again, I really insist on this, the process remain the same. Before the country presents its report and then gets questions, I think it is very, very important to note that at the beginning, there were some very scattered and fragmented way of addressing it. But the OCHR office has finally developed a very, very good guidance, which now form the basis of that process. I think that certainly, you know, of course, all these guidances, etc., etc. Some of you who have been part of it already, you know those guidances, and then they are very important to make sure that all information provided are uniform, are also responsive to the 5 criteria that I have indicated at the beginning. When a country is presenting a report, the country should ensure that all documentation include sessions that pattern to identification of achievement, best practice, challenges, and limitations. The country has to indicate also the key national priorities, initiatives, and commitment. The country has also the obligation to formulate the expectation in terms of capacity, needs, and also in terms of technical cooperation. In our language, we call it technical cooperation. You can call it technical assistance. And then the presentation by the country concerned is based on those reality that I mentioned, and then also any specific issue that the country may wish to pass on or to showcase at the Human Rights Council level. What happened before the review? In preparation for each country's review, other country states are provided with 3 different documents. And the first one is, of course, the information tool that is prepared by the country. It's always kind of 20 pages of document, which highlight what I indicated initially. And then a second document, which is a compilation of information from the human rights mechanism prepared by OCHR, by my office. This document approximately is about maybe 5 pages of a report with relevant information on how the country is doing about the convention that it has ratified or the treaty that it is party to. And then this also includes also information from UN agencies that are working at the country level. And then the third document, of course, is the summary of stakeholders, NGO submissions, prepared also by OCHR. And this is where we will spend a little bit of time on, because this is what concerns us the most. It is usually 10 pages of document with information provided by NGOs, by non-governmental organizations, in addition to the government official report, some grassroots organization or some faith-based organization like Pax Romana, who are really providing information on how the government is doing on specific human rights issues. And then I think that this is, in my view, the most critical part of it. I will not get into how the interactive dialogue takes place, because that doesn't concern us. That concerns alone the country who are part of the Human Rights Council. The government, of course, presents its report. It's 3 hours interactive dialogue. Government presents its report for 1 hour, and then after that, the other country takes the floor and then ask questions, and questions are answers, and then government, of course, take notes. Countries also provide recommendations, specific recommendations, and those recommendations are first of all informally compiled by the Troika, and the Troika are 3 countries that are randomly chosen, of course, and who serve as a rapporteur to the process, to the process itself, and then formally adopted by the Human Rights Council official regular sessions. So I am not going to do that. So I will spend the next time on how the NGO engage the UPR process, because this is what we wanted to highlight. I think that as I indicated, the UPR is a peer review process where country review country. This is unique because when you take, for some of you who knows exactly how the international human rights mechanism is structured, we have what we call the treaty bodies. And those treaty bodies have the obligation to ensure that specific convention like CEDAW, like the Convention on the Rights of the Child, like the ICCPR International Covenant of Civil and Political Rights, CSCR, the Convention on Civil and Political, on Socio-Economic and Cultural Rights. So all those things are dealt with under a mechanism called the treaty bodies. And those treaty bodies review the performance of countries that are member or that are party to each of you is done by experts within specific committee. But as opposed to the UPR, the review is a peer review. It is done by the countries, and which makes it a little bit difficult for NGO to have a say. But however, within the very limited role that is actually very much dedicated to the NGOs, it was acknowledged that the contribution of the civil society organization is key to balance the information that is being provided by government, and also to provide to OCHR and then the country who are reviewing, and it's very specific other country, accurate information, independent information that will be used to buttress the challenge or the need that a civil society organization or human rights defenders are putting forward at the country level for human rights protections. And as you can see, we can either, when I say we, I'm talking about civil society organization, NGO, such as Pax Romana. We can either work before or after the review. Before, by providing our own assessment on specific human rights issues, and or after, by supporting through very specific project the implementation of a recommendation that will come from the review itself. So those are the two ones. Either, or we can, it's not either, we have to do both, because we have to be at the beginning by providing very independent information. But at the end also, when the recommendations are made by the peer of the country, we can also choose where we believe that we have a comparative advantage to come in and then help implement. How, what are the ways to participate? And the first one that I say is to engage in consultation with government. I think this is very critical. As Pax Romana or as an NGO, we have to create avenue, mechanism, or situation or occurrences where we can dialogue with government and see exactly how we are going to support the government in identifying its own challenges and priorities while they are developing their own proposal for the UPR review. The second thing that I think, which is part of the toolkit that scale that we are using for this presentation is submit a stakeholder report. A stakeholder report is what we more or less call the shadow report in other processes, the statutory processes. And that is an independent report that we can provide in order to balance. Sometimes government are very rosy about what they have done. Sometimes they say everything they have not done, they've done it. So it is important that we have voices from civil society organization or from organization, faith-based organization, which belong to the civil society, like Pax Romana, to say, no, I think that we are also part of that country, and therefore we believe that things have been this way rather than this way. So it is important that we submit a stakeholder report. And by submitting stakeholder report, I think that we create a space for ourselves by telling government that, okay, we are providing oversight on your performance, on your record, on the human rights, and therefore we can be considered as an entity that can support not only the presentation, but also the implementation of recommendation. We can also, and this is the third point, lobby countries. You know, and this is very, very critical. We have to establish a relationship with embassies, foreign missions that are in our country, who most of the time on a bilateral cooperation basis support financially or in many ways our country. And it is our role to lobby. If we know that, let's say, that the freedom of association is a right that is under danger in the country, and that the legislation that exists at the country level does not favor full enjoyment of that right, it is our role, our responsibility to, of course, to talk to the government, but also to have a dialogue with countries that have missions in our own country, to support our advocacy for such kind of right to be fully enjoyable or enjoying. And that is the traditional way that we engage in. And the same thing if we wanted to advocate for release of political detainees, and this is how we can do. We can talk to government, but also we can create dialogue and cooperation with those missions, and to put pressure on our government to move forward in that. And this is very important because it is the same country who at the Human Rights Council will be reviewing as peer the country, your own country. So it's important that we choose countries that are influential and then engage with them and then ask them to support us to influence the government to move forward on specific legislation that will help protection of human rights. The next thing that we can do is to attend the UPR working group sessions. The UPR working group sessions are very, very interesting deliberations where definitely you see the review and you are able to see how government lies or how government is serious, how government is very committed to fulfill its own obligations. And when you're there, it is very, very important that you seize the opportunity to influence the debate and then also to very much highlight where government may not be very much saying the truth, but there are different mechanisms. You can have side forum, you can have side intervention, but during the interactive dialogue, you can also, when you have already established cooperation with a specific country, you can pass on information to the country who have the flow, and then they can really air your concern as it is required. We can also attend and participate in the Human Rights Council session. And there are human rights forums where human rights organizations, civil society organizations, international, both national and international, are allowed to make statements and then also to contribute to the overall debate. And this is our role, and we can also do that. And then the last point where I believe we can be very, very useful and very constructive in our support to the UPR process is how do we follow up on recommendations? Recommendations that arose from the review made by the peer countries during the interactive dialogue that takes place. And there is a lot of resources nowadays for supporting civil society organization involvement into how states implement UPR recommendations and how civil society organizations indeed help some of these recommendations to become a reality. So it depends on where we are. We can actually try to do where we feel it is we've got the comparative advantage to do. As I was saying, the review itself is a review that consists of 3 hours, and during those 3 hours, the country actually presents its report, receive questions and recommendations, and then a country can answer those questions, and we as a civil society organizations, we can also try to use our contact and connection and to be part of the process. I have indicated to you that this review is facilitated by a troika of a 3 countries where which are randomly selected to review, to facilitate the process, and to serve as a rapporteur. And those are the ones who actually put together all the recommendations. The recommendation that the government has accepted and the recommendation that the government has not accepted, plus the recommendation that the government has not accepted but not rejected. All that is put in a document and informally shared and later on formally shared and adopted by the Human Rights Council. And that is the document that we call the recommendation arising from the UPR process. And during the time between the review and the next review, which, as I say, initially was 5 years, but now it's actually 4 years, the government has the obligation committed to implement all the recommendations that it has accepted. And in doing so, we can help them. We can help them to facilitate, and we can work with other civil society organizations. We can work with UN country team members, the UN agencies, funds and programs to support the effort by the government to implement its own acceptance and commitment. I would end by saying that the UPR process is a process that is really, in my view, very fair. Very, very fair in a sense that it has come to correct the discrepancies of treatment, the bias of treatment on review of the human rights record of country of the Human Rights Council that existed before. And on that note, it is widely acknowledged and accepted by every single country. Not only because it has addressed that discrepancy, but also it is a peer review. If you review me, make sure that I review next time. It is not that America will review Cuba and then Cuba will never have a chance to review America. No, it's not like that. The beauty of it is that America can review Benin and then Cuba can review America. And that's what happened. I think I can remember the year where Cuba was very much happy to be at the forefront of reviewing the human rights record of the United States of America, which has never happened in the past. where you have Western countries that are very subjected to the scrutiny of a third world country with the same rigor, with the same capacity to comment, with the same capacity to interact, with the same capacity to review and then to criticize and also to construct. So it is a very positive review and mechanism that everyone use to exercise their membership of the Human Rights Council as far as the human rights is concerned. What does it tell us as the Pax Romana? It tells us that the fight for justice, for human dignity that Chantal was mentioning at the beginning, is an essential component of our faith. And when we live in a society, where inequalities are common, where injustice is common, where discrepancies between those who have and those who do not have are common, where we don't have a regulatory system to make sure that the very few or little resources that we have at a country level benefited to everyone equally, the UPR process becomes an instrument, a regulatory international global instrument to help us to live our faith, to ensure that what we say, what we express, what we live in our continuation of the public ministry of Jesus Christ is translated in how we believe the social justice and the social teaching of the church can become a reality. It can become a reality through faith basis by doing the solidarity work, by doing a lot of solidarity work, as we usually do, by being there, by putting forward our preferential option for the poor, which is already a fight for justice and inequality, but it can also be done, and most importantly, by influencing laws that are creating those kind of inequality at the country level. And this is our role. We say that we have a preferential option for the poor, which is very much encrusted in the social teaching of the church. And it is an obligation, I would say, for us to be more visible on the forefront of UPR, which itself is a very fair tool to assess without discrimination and without arrogance, and fairly the human rights and the fairness of everyone, of every country, be it a rich country, big country, small country, poor country. I would end there by saying that it is important for us to live our faith in a way that helps us to change, to make a change happen in the society that we live. And one of the very meaningful ways to do so is to ensure that among many other things, we are part and an effectively part of the UPR process. I'll stop there and then give back the floor to Madame Chantal, who is facilitating this conversation. And then I'm ready to take any question. I think, as you can see, I try to share informally some of this information, but I will be very happy to get any question from you, either on the process or on the inclusion of the NGOs in the process, or as for us as the Pax Romana, both a student organization and intellectual Catholic organization, and then how we can all together join forces to support the emanation of dignity and the respect of fundamental rights at country level. Thank you very much. Chantal, back to you.
Thank you very much, Marcel, for this brilliant presentation. Then I guess all the participants have taken some key points for their own understanding and probably also for Pax Romana to move on, or even to see which kind of activity or action from now on they can orient themselves in terms of working. Then I'm receiving many questions. So that means that the presentation was very insightful, and people have put a lot on it. So what I would like to do first, probably I will take first the first 3 questions. Then from there, Marcel, you can answer those one, while I will be getting other more questions for you. So
okay.
the first question I've gotten is from Fred. And it is saying this, are there sanctions or punishment for countries that do not follow the recommendation of the UPR? Are there any sanctions or punishment for countries that do not follow the recommendation of UPR process? And another question that came from Kaketo, he's saying that Kenya has been reviewed 3 times in 2010, 2015, 2020, and he's asking, is it the case that it will now be reviewed in 2024?
Yeah.
Then the third question is also from Fred. He's asking, as a Christian organization, NGO, how do we position ourselves in terms of approach, content, different from secular NGOs, so that we can be unique? Are there special topics to focus on? So those are the 3 first questions. I would like Marcel to react on this, while we'll be moving to get more questions. And I remind also for the timing, because this session was to be for 1 hour, 30 minutes, then we still have some more minutes. So 30 minutes almost, we still have time. So Marcel, you have the floor for those 3 first questions.
Okay, the first one, I think that whether there is a sanction for not fulfilling the UPR recommendation. No, the answer is no. There's no formal sanction for anyone who failed to fulfill the recommendation. However, there is a moral obligation that you undertake by accepting, because the review allows you to say no to recommendation, or to say yes to recommendation, or to say that you noted. So you are not saying no, you are not saying yes. So countries always choose to say yes to what they can implement and no to what they can't implement. I think that there is no sanction, but we have seen situation where it is really the same moral obligation in the international human rights system. There's nowhere that it's written that when you don't fulfill your obligation, your commitment, somebody will come and then do ABC to you. No, it's not like that. It is the moral obligation that you have to fulfill it that becomes a liability for you. And we have seen situations where country supported to other country based on the capacity or the reality, the record of a specific country to fulfill UPR recommendation. So it is increasingly become a kind of a political pressure instrument for bilateral cooperation and also for multilateral cooperation. And I think that this is something that is beautiful, because I don't feel that anyone holds the primacy of the truth or goodness to be able to dictate their rule to others. We say it is a peer review, and that peer review is something that needed to be exercised in a very free, in a very, very respectable, in a very, very equitable way. But the moral guarantee is there, and the moral guarantee is the one that becomes the punishment that no country wanted to undergo. I saw countries, especially those who are very much cautious about their image, doing everything not to fail any recommendation. And this is what we're seeing. But the fact that the process itself is fair and that no one is believed to be beyond the rule, and that the rule apply equally to everyone, trigger the commitment of the state to fulfill the recommendation that they have committed to. The next question is about, I think the periodicity, of course. Kenya review. If I understand well, Kenya has been reviewed 3 times, and then each time I think the periodicity is 5 years. So it shall continue because it is an ended process. It's a process that will continue indefinitely. As long as Kenya will remain a member of the United Nations, Kenya will be reviewed on a 5-year basis or 4.5-year basis. I need to have clarity about the new periodicity, but I understand that it is, I think, now falling to 4 or 4.5 years or 4 years. So that review will continue, and then Kenya would always come to showcase progress that it has made during the last review, and then the commitment that it has made to implement a specific recommendation. And if at all there are recommendations that have not been fulfilled, then Kenya has to explain why and give new guarantee that it will be fulfilled in the next review or in the next implementation phase. State has 5 years to implement the recommendation, which is a lot. And more, as I say, civil society organization, specific trust fund on UPR, and then bilateral cooperation, and also the UN agency funds and program are there to support the country to fulfill those obligations, in addition to internal and national resources generated by those countries themselves. And then the last point about the specificity of faith-based organization to enter in the process. I think that there's no, in my view, very specific, very clear angle for faith-based organization. I think we need to choose carefully our entry point based on our comparative advantage. Let me give you an example. If we believe, for example, that death penalty is a cause that we want to defend, and that the death penalty is still applicable in our country, we as Pax Romana, we can actually choose to write a report, an alternative report, in addition to the government report, in order to put pressure on government and to sensitize the reviewer countries to make a recommendation in that regard, so that it becomes part of the recommendation. And we could choose to very much support that owing to our attachment to value of life, for example. Or one of the area where we can and where we are always very, very welcome is in the area of socio-economic and cultural right. Right to education, right to health. Those are rights that are progressive rights, where they attain, whose attainment are based on reality of the ground. And definitely, we see very much a comparative advantage for us in supporting countries to develop internal mechanisms to fulfill those rights. The other thing that I may talk about is when we are in a country, when we are in a country where the freedom of religion is not observed. That can be an entry point where we can prepare a report, lobby, and make sure that it becomes part of the recommendation, either accepted or noted or even rejected recommendation, doesn't matter, but it's part of the recommendation because all recommendations are contained in the final report and advocate heavily for us to to be part of the government implementation agenda. So I think that it depends on our own priority. We are member of ECOSOC, and then being a member of ECOSOC means that we are already taking part of our social responsibility within the United Nations system. And therefore, I think that it is important that we translate that faith into a normative framework that identifies issues that are related to our faith, but that are very tangible and then very clear within the society where we can make a difference. And again, there's nowhere that there's a list of things. Each country has its own reality, and those reality depends on the capacity of national movement or national Pax Romana presence to really move forward, either together with other groups or alone. Back to you.
Okay, thank you, Marcel. We are still receiving many questions. That means the discussion is very interesting. Thank you for that, and thank you for those who are following us on Facebook and other means. There is one question talking about challenges, and that question is coming from John. He's saying this, what are some of the challenges that NGOs experience in following up on state implementation based on your experience, and how can such be addressed? So what are some of the challenges that NGOs experience in following up on state implementation based on your experience, and how can such be addressed? That's the first question from John. And you talk about a stakeholder report or a shadow report. So Edouard is asking, how do we develop a good shadow report? And how do we submit that kind of report? So those are two questions. And Richard Kaketo is coming with one question on asking that, assuming that a treaty body recommendation is at odds, a UPR recommendation, can the state under review develop its policy based on UPR recommendation, disregard or ignore that treaty body recommendation? So those are three questions. If you will mind to get back to us on those ones.
Okay. Maybe let me start with Richard's question, the last one. The UPR recommendation and the treaty body recommendation are not mutually exclusive. Most of the time, you know, when somebody says we need to pass a law to criminalize female genital mutilation, let's just take that example. It may be a recommendation expressly made by a specific peer country during the review in the UPR. But it is fundamentally also echoing something that is in CEDAW. And the question is, if the country is a party to CEDAW, then the recommendation becomes a UPR recommendation and then also treaty body recommendation. And the country, when the country satisfied that recommendation, it satisfied the recommendation and then address both recommendations. So most of what we have noticed, what I noticed as part of my experience is that countries are more inclined to move forward on UPR recommendation than treaty body recommendation nowadays, simply because it is a peer review, simply because it is uniform, simply because it is fair, simply because they know that when they are being reviewed by a country, there will come also the time where they will review the same country which has reviewed them. So it becomes something that is a mechanism that is fair enough for the review process. But whether you resolve FGM issue through enacting capable and then sufficient legislation as a result of the UPR, or whether you do it under your commitment, through your commitment under CEDAW, it is the same country and it's the same law. So I think that it is very, very important to ensure that we take it that way. But the final point is that the commitment that we make as a country by ratifying a convention or treaty is a binding commitment. Is a binding commitment, and countries who fail to fulfill those commitments are failing their word, and they are actually not respecting international law, and that becomes more legal fault, I would say. Let me use that expression. And the commitment is stronger, the pressure is much stronger and the commitment that the country itself make by ratifying a specific international human rights protection instrument, and then just committing to a recommendation by a country during a peer review process that UPR provide. What I always advise is that we need to hold the country accountable. If you want to file a lawsuit against a country, I think that one of the legal bases that you could use as the commitment that the country made by ratifying specific convention or instrument. And you can have a much more powerful argument to hold the country accountable. But you may not have the same power, the same strength in holding the country accountable when they fail to their duty or their commitment by using the UPR recommendation, because it's just a commitment to a recommendation made by a country during a peer review. It is not legally binding on a specific country. The challenge facing NGOs, I think there are many. They are not really different from challenges that NGO or civil society organization face in interacting with other treaty body mechanisms. It's the same. What I always ask a civil society organization to do is to build sound and credible, trustworthy relationship with states. When you are not in a situation where you can dialogue with states, you put yourself in a situation where you are considered as an enemy to the state, and then anything you say is considered as very void or very critical or very negative by the state. So first thing to do is to build the relationship, build a constructive relationship with states by showing cases that you're not there just to criticize, but you're there to support the state in fulfilling their own obligation. They ratify conventions by themselves. No one forced them to do so. They accepted by themselves recommendation from the UPR. No one asked them to do so. And therefore, they should be able to fulfill those recommendations by themselves. And if their voices like ours to support them, then those voices should be welcome. So we should build that relationship. And then secondly, we should make sure that that relationship is translated into a very normative framework where we are seen as doing something that help advance the cause that we're defending. If we don't do that, we may be missing the point all the time. And we will be considered as the presence of external forces and that are trying to destabilize the regime or government at our own country, which is not most of the time the case. Of course, that sometimes really that may be the case, but in the vast majority of the case, the engagement of the civil society is very sound engagement. It's a platform where government can benefit, where civil society also can benefit for the good of the protection of rights. So building relationship, sustaining that relationship, identifying very clear entry point where government feels that you're not attacking them, you're not naming them and to shame them, but you are naming them probably to shame them, but also to make sure that the attention are drawn on very specific fundamental issues that are dear to the people. The last point is the question that Edouard asked. Very, very important point. The report, the civil society report, can be done on the basis. They are very specific skeleton of those reports that are indicated in my presentation that will be followed. But we choose where we want to focus on. If we want to do a general report that concerns many rights, we can do it. But if we want to focus on one right and then expand on it, we can do it. Once it's done, we have to get in touch with OHCHR, the Office of High Commissioner for Human Rights, to submit the report to OHCHR, and then OHCHR would transmit and our submission to the very relevant mechanism within the UPR review process that are allowed to present and then to take a civil society or NGO independent report for as part of the overall review. Back to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Marcel. We still have 10 minutes more to go. And I will ask the last questions so that you can react on them. And the first one is coming from Mr. Kua. He's asking, can stakeholders, he means civil society organization in country, can make a country request for the country to be reviewed if they feel there is an urgent matter that need to be addressed in terms of human rights. In other words, can civil society organization make a request for their country to be reviewed if they feel there is an urgent human rights issue to be addressed in the country? And another one is coming from Richard, and this one is focusing on sexual rights. He's saying that the approach to this right by faith organization is usually critical of the mainstreaming the CSO's approach. So can Pax Romana maintain a profile and pro-family position on these matters, even though other organizations will think otherwise? So those are two questions. And I will add one from my side, which is more speaking on your own experience level. From your own experience in this human rights work, how do you see CSO's involvement in Africa context in this UPR process? If you are to give your own perception of CSO's involvement in human rights issues or anything to do with the UPR process in Africa context, are they much involved, or is there anything you feel is still missing for them to play their role?
Let me start with the last one. I think that, yes, I think the civil society organizations are very much involved in Africa, involved in the UPR process. I think they are submitting more and more alternative reports and shadow reports, and then also being part of the pressure escalation, targeting specific country which has some probably upper hand, or which has some specific relationship with the country, with your country. And then thirdly, at the implementation level. I think that we are seeing more and more that, and the practice that I have seen in many countries, which I think is extremely important, is that the government, after accepting or rejecting or noting the recommendation of the UPR report, does something that is disseminating those recommendations within the country to the civil society organization to allow them to seize the opportunity and to be part of the implementation process. And then I see more and more civil society organizations taking that role and then playing that role. And we, in many countries where I have been the representative of the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights in the country, I support very much through resources, through technical assistance, through technical cooperation, through financial support. I provided really significant support to civil society organizations, not only to be part of the UPR review process, but also to be part of the implementation of the UPR recommendation. So I think that the answer is yes. It is a very, very good trend. And there is a fund, there is a UPR fund, and that is designated for civil society organization to support the implementation process. And those funds are at the UPR level. If you wanted to access those funds, please let me know. I can put you in contact with colleagues in Geneva. And also, we can try to liaise with a specific UN agency funds and program, and to see how we can actually either access directly or secure some of these resources through other partners. So yes, my view is, but we can still do more. Civil society voice is critical. Civil society voice is extremely important to balance any form of outcome of the UPR review process. And that is something that we need to encourage, to sustain, and to reinforce as we move forward. And as Pax Romana, we've got a very, very important role to play, because we are not just a civil society organization, but we are a faith-based civil society organization that has values, that has critical vision of life, which govern our faith, but which also govern our presence in our society. We are not just any other citizen. We are citizens with other views, with other vision, with other values that we wish to protect in the society. And this helped me to go to the sexual rights issue, either at the UPR level or at the treaty body level. I think it's Richard who asked this question. I think it is a traditional question. You know, within the Human Rights Council, you have countries that are very traditional, conservative, and who are not progressive at all, and who do not believe that pro-life views or position held by the church on very specific, on many issues can be sustained through the international instruments that are available. And it's become a clash of conception of life between the church and through the church organization like ours, who are the presence of the church in the civil society, and government who are actually legitimately providing or developing policies for everyone. Our role, in my view, is to continue standing for our values, the value that we stand for, the pro-life values, and then make sure that at some point we got the sufficient comparative advantage and then leverage to lure in our cause people or entities, organizations, or countries who may not be with us. It is a fight that is beyond Pax Romana and then the UPR. It is a fight which is broadly a philosophy of life, you know, that we see. It is about gay rights, for example. It's about abortion, for example. It's about women's rights, for example, and all those are issues that the church that we serve, the church that we are part of, has position on. And those positions are not necessarily, most of the time, the position defended in the international human rights protection instrument. But it is our role to make sure that we defend our views if we believe in them. We defend our values. Who knows? Maybe law itself is an involving lively instrument. They grow, they develop, and then they die, and they also regenerate themselves. So when we continue advocating for our values, maybe one day those values could become the normative framework. But for the time being, I think it is critical that we don't surrender our faith simply because somewhere somebody say that you have to do this or you have to do that. I think that this is I addressed the three questions. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. You did it. Okay. So thank you. I think we've taken most of the question, and I just wanted to wrap up a bit. But before doing that, I would like, before thanking Marcella and all the participants, I would like you to address us your final word for all these participants before I conclude. So.
Okay. No, thank you very much, Chantal. I'm very privileged and very honored to speak to you all. I don't know how many are there finally. Is it still 25 or more than that or less than that?
It's really, more than that.
More than that, okay, good. Yeah. I'm very honored and very privileged to have this interactive dialogue with you on a very important issue concerning the UPR Universal Periodic Review. I think that we have to remember on a daily basis that we are not just citizens, we are citizen plus, as I like telling my friends when I was still coordinator of Pax Romana, International Movement of Catholic Students in Nairobi. I used to tell them we are not just youth, we are youth plus. Youth plus because we carry values that are not carried by most. And those values are the ones that count. Those values are the ones that are not really measurable through monetary term. Those values are the ones that are helping us to measure our dignity at work, our dignity in society, our dignity in wherever we go. Those values are the ones that shape our relationship, particular relationship with our God, with Jesus Christ that we follow, and whose public ministry has shaped our consciousness and then continue to shape our engagement as a civil servant and also as a student, as a youth in society. Please use every single possibility that you have at your disposal to make your faith felt. Don't really take unnecessary risk, even if it doesn't really make any difference if we take it. We know that our life doesn't belong to us, but as long as we use it to make good, then we will be rewarded for it. UPR is a very, very interesting, tangible mechanism that can help us to live differently our faith. And there are many other that can help us to do the same, including the different opportunity that the treaty bodies, the special procedures offer us to engage with the protection of human rights. But UPR is unique in the sense that it is a fair process. It's believed to be a fair process. It's believed to be a democratic process. Believed to be a universal process. Believed to be a process that is equal to everybody. While seeking justice on behalf of Jesus, while seeking justice on behalf of our faith, I think that it is a tool that we could cherish and then make very, very appropriate and then useful for ourselves. So thank you very much. If you need the support, please let me know. not only I'm part of you, but I'm also the other side, and then I can very much help that when I can commit fully myself to support. And then that combat, that fight is something that is good for our common cause, our possibility to remain the entity that is preferring the option, every option that help the poor, but also live an active faith that make us the salt of the life. So thank you very, very, very much. And one last point, it's good that students and then intellectual together in this conversation. This is what we want all the time. We don't want that barrier between our youth, our young people. We also have been there at some point, and we don't want that barrier. We want to have a joint engagement on critical issues that are confronted with our society. And then this one, the protection and the respect of a human right is one of them. And when we join force, when we are together in really protecting right, in being part of right protection, then we are fulfilling our faith in the best way. And I'm sure that whoever we are, wherever we can be seen as a genuine Christian and genuine Catholic. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Marcel. Thank you for your time, and thank you for your availability. Thank you for your wisdom, and thank you for your commitment for Pax Romana family. We keep praying that God may protect and guide you to keep staying with us always, and giving us sharing your experience with this. And I would like also to thank Maria and Fred for giving me this opportunity to moderate this session. And thank you to all the participants who have been very attentive with what you've been saying, and very active participation as well with all the questions we've shared. And I hope and I pray that everybody who has participated have gotten something to go back home. And I would like also to say this, if we really want all to build a just and a very peaceful world, we must really get involved wherever we are, whatever we do, to protect and to promote human dignity, because this is where we all have to move on if we really want any sustainable development. And I think that is something we have mentioned a lot during this discussion. And before concluding, just thank you to you all. And my favorite quote to tell you that don't expect change if you are not part of it. So let's all be a change maker in whatever we do. Thank you, and hoping we have something like this next time. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, guys. Thank you very, very much. I hope that I will have a list of those who attend, and then at least know who have been part of this conversation. Thank you very, very, very much. And thank you also, Chantal. Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Fred, for the amazing time you've put in it. Thank you, Edouard, for the very, very dedicated commitment that you have demonstrated in having this done. So thank you to all the team for this. I think that we are going to repeat this more and more and very often. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Yes. Then you have almost 11 countries who have participated. So that's really
wow. That's great. That's great.
That's really good. With
that's good.
Almost 40 participants.
Good. Good. Wow, 40. Yes. That's a very, very important, very interesting number.
Yes, it is. It is.
Really. Yeah. No, guys, thank you so much. I look forward to continue this conversation with you the way you wish. Okay? God bless you.